Hi, I'm Mike, PokeTips Mike, and today we're talking about marked Pokemon, what they are, and how you can get your very own. Marked Pokemon are something that have been in Pokemon Sword and Shield since day one, but there's a good chance you might not even know they exist, because they're kinda rare. Now first things first, a Pokemon Mark is basically a special ribbon that Pokemon you catch in the wild will occasionally have. You can only get marked Pokemon from wild Pokemon encounters, not from gift Pokemon, raids, or hatched Pokemon. Now, just like ribbons in this game, if your Pokemon has a mark, you could select that mark in the menu, which attaches it to the Pokemon. And once you send out that special marked Pokemon in battle, it'll have a special title. Like this Ninetales, it has the Dawn Mark, so it gets the title the Early Riser. And there's actually a lot of different types of Pokemon marks, 45 of them. There are different conditions in-game that trigger the chance of one of your Pokemon that you catch in the wild actually having one of these marks, and I'll explain more about that later. So with that being said, how do you find marked Pokemon? Well, like I mentioned before, once again, you could only find marked Pokemon in wild battles, whether it be overworld encounters, random grass encounters, or fishing encounters. Any wild Pokemon battling method works. Now, the exact chance of a Pokemon having a mark is slightly unclear at the moment, but according to research done by Smogon users, it appears there's a 5% chance of Pokemon in the wild having a mark. Now, what makes hunting for marked Pokemon so annoying is you won't know if the Pokemon you encounter in the wild actually has a mark until you catch it. Because when you first encounter the Pokemon in the wild, it doesn't show anything special. You'll only notice it's marked after you capture it by checking the menu and seeing it has a special mark. So the best way to really hunt for these is just catch as many wild Pokemon as you possibly can. Not the most exciting method, but if you think about it as shiny hunting as well, because you'll be encountering a whole bunch of Pokemon, then it's kind of like you're taking out 2 Pidgeys with 1 Geodude. See what I did there? I've got the cheesy Pokemon jokes. Now, with the Isle of Armor though, they did introduce a new item called the Mark Charm. So if you have the Isle of Armor DLC, you're able to get this item which boosts your chances of finding a marked Pokemon in the wild by a little bit. Now getting your own Mark Charm has a little bit of a requirement. You're going to have to complete the Isle of Armor Pokedex. Now honestly, it's not that bad. There's only 210 Pokemon in the Isle of Armor Pokedex, and a lot of them are actually shared with the main Galar Pokedex. So if you've been catching Pokemon to complete your regular Galar Pokedex, you'll already have quite a few Pokemon in the Isle of Armor Dex. On top of that, if you've been playing Pokemon for a while, you probably have lots of these Pokemon that are in the Isle of Armor Pokedex in other Pokemon games, so you could simply transfer them over from Pokemon Home. So assuming you completed your Isle of Armor Pokedex, all you need to do is just go to the Armor Station, basically the train station that you arrive in as soon as you get to the Isle of Armor, and talk to the lady who gave you the Pokedex in the first place. One of the rewards that she gives you is the Mark Charm. Alright, so now that we know all about marked Pokemon, what they are, and how you can get marked Pokemon, let's dive a little deeper into the specific marked Pokemon themselves. So like I said before, there's 44 different types of Pokemon marks, and not all of them are equally as rare as the other ones. So let's say you found the marked Pokemon in the wild. There's approximately a 40% chance that that marked Pokemon will have the Uncommon Mark. And even though its name is the Uncommon Mark, that basically makes the Uncommon Mark the most common mark there is. There's also a 40% chance that instead of having the Uncommon Mark, the Pokemon will have one of the time-based marks. The Lunchtime Mark, the Sleepy Time Mark, the Dusk Mark, and the Dawn Mark. And then from there, there's a 20% chance that it'll have one of the generic marks. So let's go ahead, let's take a look at all the marks and take a deep dive into them. So the first 4 marks here are all marks that any Pokemon you catch can have depending on what time of day it is. You have the Lunchtime Mark, which you can find on Pokemon you catch in the middle of the day, which I believe is 12 PM to about 7 PM. Next up is the Sleepy Time Mark, which gives your Pokemon the title the Sleepy, kind of a cool title, and you could get that on Pokemon you catch from 8 PM all the way up to about 6 AM. Third is the Dusk Mark, which has a really tight window of 7 PM to about 8 PM. But if you get a Pokemon with that, it'll get the title the Dozy. And just like the Dusk Mark, there's a Dawn Mark, which gives your Pokemon the title the Early Riser, and you can catch that on Pokemon in the morning from 6 AM until about noon. Now, next up after that, we have 8 different types of weather marks, one for each type of weather condition. The Cloudy Mark gives your Pokemon the title the Cloud Watcher. The Rainy Mark gives them the title the Sodden. The Stormy Mark gives them the title the Thunderstruck. Snowy Mark gives the title the Snow Frolicker. Blizzard Mark gives the title the Shivering. Dry Mark for the Parched. And by the way, it's a good reminder right now, drink some water, it's good for you. Alright, where were we? Sandstorm Mark for the Sandswept, and Misty Mark for the title the Mist Drifter. Then from there's a pretty interesting title that I don't believe we could actually get in-game yet. This mark is the Destiny Mark, which gives you the title the Chosen One.
What?
Now, I've searched the internet far and wide, and I haven't found any documentation showing us where you could get this mark, so I don't think it's obtainable yet in-game. It might come from an event in the future. And then we have two more specialized marks here. The Fishing Mark, which gives your Pokemon the title the Catch of the Day, and obviously that comes from Pokemon that you fish up. And then there's the Curry Mark. You could find this on Pokemon that join your team while you're in Pokemon camp after you cook some curry, and that'll give them the amazing title, the Curry Connoisseur. And then the rest of these are just super generic marks that any Pokemon has a chance of getting. The Uncommon Mark, which we already talked about, it's the most common mark there is. That'll give your Pokemon the title the Sociable. Rare Mark gives the title the Recluse. Rowdy Mark gives the title the Rowdy. Absent-Minded Mark gives the title the Spacey. Jittery Mark for the Anxious. Excited Mark for the Giddy. Charismatic Mark for the Radiant. Calmness Mark for the Serene. Intense Mark for the Feisty. Zoned Out Mark for the Daydreamer. Joyful Mark for the Joyful. Angry Mark for the Furious. Smiley Mark for the Beaming, Teary Mark for the Teary-Eyed, that's a sad title. Too bad Sobble wouldn't be able to get that one. Upbeat Mark for the Chipper, Peeved Mark for the Grumpy, Intellectual Mark for the Scholar, Ferocious Mark for the Rampaging, Crafty Mark for the Opportunist, Scowling Mark for the Stern, Kindly Mark for the Kind-Hearted, Flustered Mark for the Easily Flustered, Pumped Up Mark for the Driven, like me right now, driven to get through the rest of these marks. Zero Energy Mark for the Apathetic, Prideful Mark for the Arrogant, Unsure Mark for the Reluctant, Humble Mark for the Humble, Thorny Mark for the Pompous, Vigor Mark for the Lively, and finally, the Slump Mark for the Worn Out, like I am right now after reading off all those marks. And remember, even though there's 44 different types of marks, your Pokemon can only get one mark. It can't have them all, like you could collect a bunch of ribbons on one Pokemon. You could only get one mark on a Pokemon. And one final thing, I'm not sure exactly what the percentage is of you getting one of the weather marks, or the fishing or the curry mark, but from my experience, if you meet one of those conditions that you'll get one of those marks, it seems pretty high and you're likely to get one. And with that, my friends, you now know everything you need to know about marked Pokemon. So if you're ever looking to get the ultimate flex Pokemon, something super rare, try to hunt for a shiny Pokemon that has a mark. If you could find one of those, Arceus is truly smiling down upon you, because that would be super rare. Have you ever been able to find a marked Pokemon before? Let me know down in the comment section below. And also, if you enjoyed this video and it helped you out, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, and also subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more of my Pokemon content. I have a lot more incredible Pokemon content on the way, so if you're a Pokemon fan, you're definitely not going to want to miss it, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks again for watching, and my friends, I'll be seeing you in the next one.